Okay, so a new school year has started and a new season has started on my podcast. And I was thinking as I was preparing for the new season, who do I want to have as a guest right off the start? And I thought,
And those people were busy.
no. And I thought, okay, wouldn't it be so fantastic to have Debbie, who's the superintendent of all the schools in Idaho, come on and tell us how things are going in Idaho and how the school year is getting off to a start. And so I'm so grateful you're here, Debbie.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. All kidding aside, it's an honor to come and talk with you about my favorite topic besides my own family, and that's kids, schools, education in Idaho.
Okay, so let's kind of start off with you're taking a tour around the state. Tell us why you're doing this, because I see you on social media. I love to follow all the pictures and videos that you have, but
fun.
Why do you do this? Why is it important to you?
Well, a number of reasons. One being, how do I know and understand fully what's happening in our classrooms and in our communities and what people expect and what our teachers need and what our kids need unless I'm there. It's very different to have someone relay something to you or to read something online or read something in the paper as it is to go and in person. And I also want people to know that I want to engage and I want to see them. I want to validate what they're doing. And I think one of the best ways that you do that is to be present. And it's so great and just satisfying to go into a building and teachers and administrators are so happy to show off things that they're doing. Hey, we tried this year and look what happened, or look how our scores went up because, fill in the blank. And there are common threads and themes throughout. Successful districts have, there's a recipe for that. But with that said, there are just little different characteristics based on, where people are in the state. And I love it so much. It gets exhausting because I try to pack a lot in a few days and see as much as I can in a region, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one of the things that I thought about, as you travel around the state and you're going to see these people, are that I know that the school boards who have kids come in from their different schools, right, and are giving presentations to the boards, it's like this reminder about what is the most important thing. It keeps that, continued focus. And so I feel like as you're traveling around the state and you post it on social media, it kind of is of a showing that you are aware that the kids are in our schools, they're the most important thing. And also letting other people know that this is where the focus is. And these are all the people who participate in this process. All of our teachers and our administrators, right? They're everyone who help make this great experience for kids. And I just love that you highlight that.
Well, thank you. It's the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we talking about these policies? Why are we going to the legislature and asking for money? Why are we considering ways to support teachers? Why are we talking about X, Y, and Z? Oh yeah, the kids, it's the students. And I like to focus on that when we start talking about anything that will impact classrooms, teachers, parents, etc. And come back and say, okay, who is this good for though? I mean, there are things that we can do that are good for the adults that help support what's good for kids. But then asking that question, is this good for kids? Is this good for schools? Okay, well then let's keep talking about it rather than is it helping or doing something that is good, but it's not a priority.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Thank you for that. So let's talk about then your priorities, those 4 things that when you took office that you just said, these are the things that we're going to focus on this year. And I have this list that I found from ChatGPT. Just so grateful for ChatGPT and helping
technology.
Me. Yeah, for getting these priorities out on the paper really fast for me. But let's talk about your 4 priorities and where you are in those processes.
I love talking about this because many times the why, the work that we do in education gets lost in 1,000 other things that we're doing day to day. And so talking about what our strategic goals are at the Department of Ed and for me personally as a superintendent is a great thing to share. Something that we talk about constantly is literacy, making sure that our kids can all read at grade level. We use third grade. It's a national benchmark where we can really see results of if you get out of the third grade and you're not reading at grade level, you're going to struggle. And the interventions are going to start coming at that point. Now, I've added something this last year. I've also added being at grade level at math. And I'm really calling it getting back to basics. There's so many good things. We love science. We love social studies. We love geography. We love spelling. Those are all very important things that we want our kids to be able to have knowledge about. They have to be able to read. And we have to be able to have kids at grade level for math. And so to support that, we've done a number of things. One is we've gone and looked at the curriculum that's being used in our schools. Now, curriculum is a locally decided decision. That wasn't very eloquently said, but the local school board decides the resources, the books, the materials that are in the classroom. And so we go alongside that and say, there's some books out there that we would like you to take a look at. We need you to emphasize phonics. We're asking our district to choose books that emphasize phonics. We know that phonics are the key to successful reading. I don't know how we got away from that years ago, and we won't spend time, pondering that. But what we are saying now to districts are two things. One, train your teachers in phonics, and then have books that are founded in and based in phonics, and then support professional development around teaching your teachers on reading. And then we're adding this layer of math. Again, we're seeing our students leave elementary school starting about the 5th grade. There's a real decline statewide in math grades 5 through 8. And for many of our elementary teachers, not many of them, all of them, when they go to school to become a teacher, in elementary school, you get a certificate that's a generalist. So you know a little bit about all of the things. And that makes sense for what they're doing. They're not specializing. They're not a high school math teacher. Well, we're asking our colleges of education to focus on some of these gaps that we hear from our teachers when they get into the classroom. We need every teacher to be a reading specialist, and we need every teacher to have more skills around math. And so this back to basics, I think, is a message and a theme that resonates with all of us. There's a lot of good things we do, but where do we want to spend our time and money? So the curriculum, preparing our teachers, and then making sure that they have the supports when they're in the classroom. So that's wrapped around that first goal.
That's wrapped around the first one. And a couple of the things that I was thinking about when you said that. One, I'm going to find it and post it on social media, but actually she's a retired administrator from the eastern side of the state, was telling me there is a podcast. It's a 6-episode series on how people got away from phonics. And it happened about 15 or 20 years ago, and something came out, and then all of a sudden all these states were adopting this new way of reading,
which was how fast you could read and how quick and how you memorized words.
Yes, and they were using pictures to do that. And that has really been detrimental for our kids. That's not how, and to your point, it's phonics that help kids learn how to read.
It is. And it's what sustains them in their reading. And there's something called, if someone really wants to at 2 a.m. go down a rabbit hole about this, there's something nationally called cueing, Cueing. And that kind of encapsulates what we don't want to see. Now, I can say that as I've traveled around and talked to superintendents and others, I say, okay, what are you doing in reading in your schools? Are you using phonics? And everyone that I've talked to says, yes, we're learning, we're using phonics. But I know there's a few straggler, books out there. But getting back to this cueing, it was how fast you could read. And then you would get to a word and you could use a picture. So if the sentence was, Sally stepped on the boat, and above, and the kid hasn't memorized the word boat, there might be pictures above that. And if the kid says, Sally stepped on a ship, the teacher could say, okay, well, no, that's not okay. That's not what the word actually is. The word was boat. And so you see some of this, and I was horrified when I first saw it. I thought, oh, let's make sure this isn't, going on in our schools, and we got to focus on this phonics. And so thankfully, as I talk to our administrators and school board members, they say, no, we're focused on phonics, but we can do more around that. And then as we replace curriculum, that's where we're saying, please look at the 5 elements of what's called the science of reading. We know that that works and it's sustainable. It's how we learned. I mean, you're younger than me, but we're still younger than our grandparents, but nonetheless,
Yes.
this is how we learn to read.
Yes, I agree. It's interesting because like my older three kids, they were kind of like raised in different areas, and I saw them pick up on reading. And it was interesting because my youngest child she did a preschool like for Montessori, and she was like learning to read so well. And it's interesting because they do it a little bit different. Like they don't make the kids say the name of the letter. They do the sound of the letter, right? And so when she started in school, then when she started in public school, she had to switch over to saying the name of the letter, and she had a little bit of a harder time. And so during those couple of years, like kindergarten, first, second, third, she was like always on the edge of when we do like these the IRI, right, the Idaho Reading Index test. When she would do that, she was kind of always on the edge, and the school was really good about offering support. So then we moved to a different district, and this is like like during COVID, now after COVID. So it's like just a lot of
another layer of challenge.
Layer of challenge, and all these things are hard. And so she ended up needing a tutor, like just some extra support, right? And I was going to do it, and it was like very evident that my child did not want to learn from me. Surprise.
That's how it is with most kids and parents, yeah.
And so we brought in this tutor, and the tutor was like, I'm going to help your kid get back to phonics, because she could read, but then she'd get to these words and she would have a hard time sounding out. Well,
it's the sounding out. And what's funny, the other day, my husband was trying to, I can't remember what the word was. He I don't know what the word was, but he was like, oh, do you think it's pronounced this way or that way? I don't remember what it was, but I remembered saying this. This popped into my mind from when I was in elementary, from the phonics rules. When two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. Do you remember this?
I remember something.
Okay.
Like, yes.
Anyway, he was like, wow, you pulled that one out of the hat. And I was like, how do you not remember? Like, that's how we remember that. Or when two vowels are together, when two consonants are together, the vowel in front of it takes the short sound. Like those are sort of like the rules around phonics. And it's that, and I'm nerdy like that I'd of course throw the rules out. But I mean, that's how we sustain the language. The human language is remembering like, oh, that's how you say that. Or that's how I read that, and that's how I stop to sound it out. Yeah. So I'm so encouraged by what I see in our schools. And for me to use the bully pulpit of being the superintendent to say, we got to do phonics. We got to get back to basics. We've got to teach our kids the basic math skills. There's a lot of math that kids will use if they're going to choose careers in engineering and, being a physicist and some of that. 80% of college degrees don't require math above algebra. 80%. Now, I'm not downgrading math, so all the math people, please don't get mad at me. That's not what this is about. No. But it's coming up with what are the essential standards that we need to have around phonics and around math, so that regardless of what a kid pursues, we always make sure that they have the basic knowledge that they need.
Well, and to the idea of math, though, I mean, there are a lot of things that are covered in algebra, right? And there are those basic
and rules around math that we can learn.
Right. And so it's interesting because I'm kind of curious, and you might not, I'm kind of giving it out a little bit. Like, it's okay if you don't have like my answer to my question here. But when I think about math, like I know when my kid was in school and they were like for fifth grade and they were going in and I, was helping with math, and most parents couldn't come in and help with math because it was so tricky, right? Like now teachers are like teaching kids like the why behind it a little bit instead of just some of the memories.
The memorization.
Yeah. And so it's, I have noticed that when kids just understand, like, this is how you do it. We can talk about the why in a minute, why this works, but memorizing some of these things. I mean, how are people around the state addressing this challenge? Because math so much is now tied with reading. Because I mean, like I asked a kid several years ago, I was like, well, what's your favorite kind of math? Like, do you prefer word problems or do you prefer like just the equations? And the mother looked at her child and her child was like, what? And I was like, I'm confused. And the mother's like, everything's a word problem today. And so, that is a challenge for math. What are you seeing for that?
Well, I'm seeing and hearing just what you are. And I know at my own home, when my kids were little, some of the most frustrating homework nights that we had were when my husband and I tried to help our kids with their homework, especially their math. And I remember one night, my husband really is a great person. I'm going to tell on him a little bit, but he had helped our son, and then our son brings his homework back, and he had got a C on it or something. And my husband was like, "Oh, yay, I'm pulling a C in 4th grade." Good for us. But it was that frustrating of, well, what is it that you want them to show? What is it that we're trying to accomplish with what we're doing? Because like reading, there are rules around how to figure out math, how to figure out these equations. Now, yes, we want to understand the why, but we also want to be able to figure out things like, if you're in a store, if it's 20% off, how do we figure that out? That real world math, I think, is sometimes lost in here's the quadratic equation. And most kids are like, well, when am I going to use the quadratic equation? Well, you will if you're actually going to become a carpenter, because they use that a lot with measuring. But connecting math to real world scenarios, I think, was the goal of the word problems. But I think it's been lost in that, because some of these word problems are
they're tricky
and comical at sometimes. Like, this is not real. Like, give me some real, like, you're out shopping with your mom back to school, and the shoes you want are 20% off, and you're going to go beg your mom to buy them, and you're going to say, hey, look, they're this much money off. And we all have calculators on our phones. And so I think that kids are engaged better when they see the application of what they're learning. And I think that makes parents go, oh, I get why they're trying to show you how to do this, because this is how and where you're going to use it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm so glad, I'm glad that you're hearing, it just feels good to hear that you're hearing from other people around the state.
Oh, absolutely.
Like things that I'm experiencing as a parent, right? It feels
there's just like nothing more diminishing to you as an adult as when you look at your kid's homework and you're like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to help you. You're on the computer, going to see whatever. But also, I think that's okay to be real with kids. Like, let's figure it out together. I don't remember. I haven't divided in fractions in a long time. I'm going to dust that off in my mind. Let's figure it out together.
Yes. And yeah, because part of the process of learning is not knowing. And that's something that I've really tried to help my kids understand.
And that's okay.
Right? It's okay not to know things. We can figure this out together. And this isn't the same as when I was in school, but look, we have Google now, and I didn't have that when I was in school, right?
And if we knew everything, you wouldn't have to be in the 3rd grade anymore. If you knew everything, that's why we're learning it. And I think because our lives are different than our parents and our grandparents, and it's just things are different. We do have more supports. We're more pressed for time, and some of the work, I'm not a fan of busy work, and I don't know that anybody is. I think that's another frustrating part of this overall experience that families have. I get practice. We want to practice things, and we want to have experiences that really deepen the understanding and the knowledge of whatever was taught. Even in the kindergarten, we can deepen that knowledge. But I think the yesteryear part of bringing home a workbook and just sort of filling things out just to say you can hand it in, I sure hope that that's in the rearview mirror for us.
Yeah, I know that there are some parents around the state who are still experiencing kind of this truckload of homework. And a lot of it, I think, is busy work for people. And it's interesting because some of the parents have mentioned, so I took a tour around the state as the PTA president, and I got to meet parents all over who were PTA and also other parent leaders and just involved in their school, their kids' experiences. And some of them were saying, it's really frustrating because we want to have time as a family too. And there's other activities going on. And all of this homework is taking so much time. And so parents are learning how they're trying to figure out how to navigate that bridge, because that's hard for them, right? As they're trying to support their kid and they know their kid, but also some of this busy work just isn't valuable for them or their family's time.
And I think kind of morphing into one of the other goals that I have about preparation, that our students are prepared for life and career beyond the formal education system, takes in a part of this. We're asking our teachers And so many of them are. I'm stereotyping and generalizing. We know that there's a lot of good work and innovation being done in the classroom, but we're constantly inviting and encouraging our teachers to be creative about how they have a student demonstrate the knowledge of whatever it was taught. How are we assessing our kids? Yes, we can assess them on paper, and the federal government says you'll assess all of your students one time a year. Districts are assessing, all the time, and teachers are. But there are different ways to show the knowledge. I'm a big fan of work-based projects, of school to work, any type of what do we do? And it's not necessarily building something, but it's the application of the knowledge. Okay, well, I know something, but what do I do with that? And so I think for homework, for parents to go and talk to teachers and say, look, we're supportive and we want our child to learn. Are there some other ways that we could demonstrate that rather than taking 15, 20 minutes on a worksheet where everyone's bawling, because we're all tired and we just want to get done with it? What are some other things that could happen? And as we look at the high school age, I'm asking our school boards to think differently about the high school experience for particularly our juniors and seniors, that we make it less about seat time and more about doing something. And whether that's being in the shop, if that's where you want to be, or going and being an intern or apprentice to a job that you think you maybe want to do, that's education. That's learning. Let's take account of that and let's count that for kids.
So are there districts that have started doing that because there are graduation requirements? How are they navigating that process, and have you seen it started so far?
Yes, I definitely see some movement and momentum towards that. And one of the things that we're doing at our office is showing districts how they can look at what the state and their district graduation requirements are and find a crosswalk to what a kid is doing. So the example I just shared of, an internship or an apprenticeship, count that for credit. Don't make that all the way, that's not an educational experience just because they're not in school. That is educational. And in some ways, some of the best education, particularly a junior and senior, can have. So there are opportunities available within Idaho Code right now for districts to count credit for things that don't happen right in the classroom. And we're not saying if you go to Disneyland, count that as your PE because you got in 17,000 steps or something. We're not saying that, and I don't think anyone is proposing that. But what we are saying is take a look at what's happening outside of school. If a kid's involved in 4-H, if a kid's involved in FFA, there's so many. If a kid is this, what if they take private lessons for saxophone or for piano? That's learning, and they're practicing at home. How can you count as that towards a music credit? And think outside of the traditional lanes that we've had, and really think more broadly and comprehensively about what the kids are doing and what is education.
Well, and I think that, for example, the advanced opportunities is something that has started. I mean, this has been something that's going on in the state for a really long time. But the advanced opportunities, right? That's that program that's from starts in 7th grade, goes to 12th, where kids have an opportunity to access online classes, pay for CTE courses. There's 2 other ones. I can never remember how the money is spent.
You can industry certificates. You can pay to take a test to be certified in a certain industry.
Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that program is an eye-opening, it can be an eye-opening experience for parents to say, hey, I can make this experience for my kid in the public school, which I love my public school, more personalized for them so that it's meeting their needs and also meeting the needs of our family, right where we are, in Idaho. And I really like the idea of saying, hey, if a kid is having a music class or, FFA. I mean, I just visited my hometown in Oregon, and I was talking, and I went to the county fair, And I was talking with my friend there, and she was saying, my kid learns so much in these programs. And I wish that my school district figured out a way to incorporate what my kid was learning into his everyday experience so that he could get more credit for this.
Because, so do I. Yeah. No, you're so right. And I think that's a perfect example this time of year. My kids didn't take animals to the fair, but their friends did. And it's months long. I mean, this isn't a one and done where you take a steer, you buy a steer on Thursday and take it to the fair on Saturday. And so examples like that, I think are worthy of the time and attention of our school boards. You mentioned advanced opportunities, and that was designed to give kids a jump start on college. And so what I'm asking and inviting our districts and encouraging our districts to do is to think of all the other things. So we've got this vehicle to help you get to college. Now, we want kids to go to college, and we're good at that. For kids who aren't doing that, we can be equal in how we honor that work.
Yeah. And it's in the state. I mean, I know for like my school district here, they talk about college and career ready. Mm-hmm. Is that a motto that comes from the state?
It is, yeah. And I was a part of the State Board of Education when we shifted towards that, because we heard from families and from students and advisors that many of our students felt left out of the story. That everything was designed, here's scholarships to go to college, here's money to go to college, here's money for, this, that, or the other. It was all intended for a 4-year degree experience. I think that that's one of the reasons that the launch program was born, was to say, and we've got this complete other segment or additional segment of students and citizens in Idaho, and we've done all of these things over on this side of the fence. How about we level that out a little bit and say, well, if you want to go to lineman school, that's as important as anything else. Here's a scholarship for you to be able to do that. And I know that that's been controversial and people have different views of it, but that's how I've always seen that, is a leveling of the playing field.
I like that, because at the end of the day, it's so important for us as communities to have people who are in these jobs that are essential to keep our communities going.
Oh, for sure.
Right? And it's not just about the college, it's and career. And both of those, I feel like, even in the setting of getting kids ready for the next thing, it's just about getting them ready for the next thing.
And everything's a job.
Yes.
So even if you go to college and decide you want to be a professor at college, that's a job. Like ultimately, we're talking everything is a job. We need engineers that can design our bridges, and we need people that will build the bridges. We need people that will run the heavy equipment. We need people that will mix the cement. All of those people are necessary and important, as you say, around supporting and building up a community. And that's why I spend so much time talking about career technical education, how we're preparing kids, how we're developing the skills that they have that are transferable to any job that they want. So many times I hear people say, how come you don't require reading a tape measure as part of math? Like when we're talking about fractions, why isn't the teacher pulling out a tape measure? Like teach the kids how to read a tape measure while you're teaching them about fractions. Yeah, we need to be doing that. And those are the types of things, that I encourage and talk about. And there's so many great things happening in our state and in our own backyards. And when we tell our kids, you don't have to leave the state to have a good job. You don't have to leave your home and the place that you've grown up in that you want to stay in to support a family or to support yourself. They're right here. Let's get kids ready for those jobs.
I love that. Okay, so then the next priority. What's another priority for you? I mean, I have my list, but I know
this is a test. No,
yeah.
Thank goodness I know the answers.
Yeah.
We have spent a lot of time over the last almost 2 years talking about modernizing the public schools budget. So there's a lot of money that goes into public schools. $2.65 billion are available or appropriated by the legislature to be distributed to schools. What I'm hearing more and more, and I've heard it for a while, but the last couple of years, it's been even louder of a cry. Our local districts want more local control over their own budgeting. So there's a lot of line items. Anytime you deal with government, and I get this, there's an accountability measure that goes with that. How are you spending your money? This is how we're sending it out. We want you to spend it just like this. Well, when you look at the public schools budget over the last 20 years, there's a lot of line items on there that were really great 20 years ago that districts are saying, but I don't use my money like that anymore. But the public schools budget doesn't allow me to use it any other way. And so they're like, well, that money gets left on the table because I can't use it in any other way. So I've approached the budgeting process from the perspective of this. Without adding new money into the budget, we can have our districts feel like they have more money if they can control their money. If we're better using the money that we've got and identifying what our priorities and initiatives are at a local level, and I was on a local board, so I lived that life of the state sends you money and you're like, okay, we don't need all the money over here. We wanted to put it into gifted and talented, but the state says I have to use it here. So this last year, I introduced a policy on how to distribute the existing dollars, and unfortunately, it stalled out in the House before the session was over. But I'm bringing it back because I believe in it, and I've got a budget that needs to be turned in this Friday, actually. And one of the things that we're looking at is not adding. We're not going to request a ton of money. What we're going to do is say, can you let us distribute the money in a way that really suits the needs of the local district in that they have local control?
I think that is so important because local communities at the end of the day know what is best for their areas. And also, I mean, even to the point of like curriculum, right? The state has guidelines that the local districts need to meet, but the district can then look at those guidelines and determine what curriculum is best for them. So in my mind, it would be the same thing for the budget, right? There are important markers that need to be, right? There's guidelines here, but then you determine how those guidelines are met, how they're incorporated into your district. Because some of our districts are, I think, probably much more geared towards FFA things, or right, or just based on where they are around the state, and they're the ones that need to be having that freedom. I think it's so interesting to me when I talk to people and they're like, gosh, we give so much money to schools. Like, why don't schools have enough money for these different things? Like, they get these big lumps. And then I say, well, there's all these line items, right? And I start going through it with them. And then it's like the light bulb goes off. Oh, I had no idea. I get it. Like, most people probably don't know that that's how it occurs, right?
And the school finance part of a school district is very complex. And even at the state level, it's a complex formula of how the numbers, it rolls up into something called support units, which is what the cost of a classroom would be, like part teacher, part kid, part operations. It's a very complicated formula. But what's not complicated that I can explain to you and others is this. When the district gets their money from the state, and it comes based on essentially how many students are coming to school every day, 85% of that money goes to pay teachers' salaries and benefits. Now, I'm not criticizing that. That's what it should do. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're educating kids, and the teachers are the ones educating. And so that's going to be the biggest capital expenditure that we have. And so 85% is going to go straight off the top. Then 10% of what's left goes to things like fuel, utilities, internet, operational things. So there's 95% of your budget is spent. Then you have, and in some districts it might be 7, but generally speaking, a district really controls about 5% of their own budget. So then when patrons come to me and say, I'm so sick of being asked to pay more taxes, and I get it, I don't want to pay any more taxes either. When our boards, or when I say, here's just a really quick lesson, this is why they're coming to you. It's because so much is tied up in what you have to spend. So what I'm saying is, within that 5% of the budget, open that up. Let districts decide where they want to put it. Do they want to increase funds going to FFA? Do they have a really great robotics program? Do they want to put it towards gifted and talented? Do they want to have whatever that thing is? That's where we want it to look different. And so that's what I'm going to promote. And I'm going to try to gather up as many supporters as I can, because it's a job to educate and connect with legislators to help them understand why I'm proposing that. And everyone comes at it from a different perspective. But when we talk to our school officials, they're like, oh, please, let us have some more say over our money. Also recognizing that local board members are elected. They're elected by the same people that sent the legislature in that district. And so I think we forget some of these disconnects of who represents who and who's speaking for who and all of that.
Yeah, well, I really hope that legislative members are going to listen to their school board members, because to your point, they're all elected
by the same people
in their community.
Yeah.
And so those school board members are the ones who are specifically over those schools. They're governing our schools, and the legislators, they have a lot of topics that they're covering, right? And so one of the things that I really loved when I served on the school board was that not every single one of them, but there were a couple of legislators from our area who would come specifically and talk to our school boards.
I love that.
And they would come ask us what our priorities were for the year, what we wanted. And then there was this awesome connection between the superintendent and the legislators. So he would provide feedback on
so perfect.
Right. And I was like, that is a very functioning relationship. Not that those legislators would always vote exactly how we had hoped, but it was interesting the how those legislators did value what was being offered from the school board and the superintendent, because the superintendent particularly is like the expert in that field, right?
And just that listening piece is so important.
And I think that from my perspective, we need more of that and more collaborative conversations. Not that it's going to, we're not forcing anyone to, push their vote one way or the other, but that, hey, these are our communities, and let's work together in our communities to solve these problems that, come up within our communities.
So well said.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then let's talk about the other priority, because there's one more, right? Or there are two?
Well, we have, I think I talk a lot about behavioral health and so forth, and that one's kind of packed in to a lot of things. We're trying to prepare our students for life, and they come into a classroom with life happening around them. And one of the things that we've heard, and this kind of goes into the fourth goal, we want to attract and retain high quality educators. The first thing that I hear from educators around the state when I ask them about their classroom, their experience, etc., before anything else is discussed, they say, we need help in our classroom managing students. More and more students are coming into the classroom with life around them. And we see more and more students that are dealing with crisis, more and more that are dealing with emotional health issues. And I'm not talking about a class clown or a kid that's rambunctious or talkative. I was that talkative kid, shocker. And that's not what I'm talking about. But we have students coming into classrooms that have some very severe issues that they're dealing with, and the family support unit around them may not be prepared and equipped to help them either. And what I hear from teachers, and my conclusion, many of the students that our teachers struggle with in the classroom, their parents are also struggling with them. And so this is where we start talking about what's the right lane and what's the right role for teachers. We don't want them to be nurses. We're not trying to turn them into therapists. We're not trying to turn our schools into hospitals to treat things. But we need to prepare our teachers with some basic skills and give them some tools to de-escalate situations. What's a protocol of escorting a student out? I hate when I hear that an entire classroom got removed because one student was having a meltdown. That's very backwards. And so we're talking very openly and actively with our administrators and with our teachers on what those protocols could be. Many of our teachers are afraid to do anything, that they'll be sued or that the parents will be mad. And we're saying in those situations, as you can touch a child, get their arm, and escort them out of the classroom. And so that's one of the things that we're talking about with this goal of recruiting and retaining high quality educators. We've got to create some conditions where teachers feel safe in the classroom.
Oh, yes, I totally agree. And I really appreciate that you talk about how it is backwards for an entire classroom to leave when one student is having a problem. I mean, at one point we lived in a different state, and my kindergartner, she had there was a time, there were two teachers in the room actually. So in this state, it was kind of cool. They had, in the younger grades, they had a teacher, and then they always had a para in the classroom. It was cool. So, but that there were a couple of times where there were some outbreaks and they had to get the kids out of the classroom. My child, she just was like, so kind of calm. She was like never bothered by it. But there was another student, her friend would go home and talk to her mom about it. And her mom said, hey, are you hearing about this? And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, it surprised me a little bit. But I think one of the things that was so bothersome for that parent was that the entire classroom is leaving.
And now that learning ended.
The learning ended.
For every kid.
Yes, the major disruption there. And one of the things that I, as a school board member, when we would have to have some of those tough conversations, maybe like in an executive session, right, where we're making a decision about a student, and there are hard things, and coupled with all of that, like the teacher in the classroom, there's hard things. But sometimes the decision, I think, and I'm going to say this with I know that there's a caveat here, there's no generalizations, but it is sometimes about the decision has to be made what's best for the biggest amount of people.
Absolutely.
Right. And that, I think.
And I don't think we have to separate those. We're not making it hard on the student who's having a moment, but we also don't have to rob everyone else from their classroom experience. And in those cases, we're counseling our teachers and our administrators to train their teachers, escort the student out of the room, and then have some protocols into place. If it's putting them into a quiet space until parents can come. Some schools will work with the counselor. Some will go get an SRO, school resource officer, depending on what it is. But right now, our teachers really feel crippled that we're going to be sued or something terrible is going to happen if we approach the child or we try to do anything with the child. And we've got to give teachers some confidence that the other adults in the state have your back.
Yeah, I agree. And so what are you noticing then around the state? Are you noticing that these changes are just kind of starting to be integrated, into the school experience, and then also on that college level where kids are being kind of, trying to recruit and retain teachers so that within even the college curriculum, it's being integrated so that they know how to, interact with parents, right? Like I was I started out as a teacher, and that was not a part of my curriculum, but I just think it would have been nice to have in a class or, a class on how to interact with the public and
I appreciate you saying this so much.
Yeah.
Last week at the August State Board of Education meeting, and I sit on the State Board of Education, I led a work session with the full board and the 4 deans of our colleges on the gap areas for preparing our teachers. And I talked about this. There's a lot of good things that we teach our teachers, but I'm in the classroom all over the state, and I've consistently heard 4 very clear themes that teachers are saying, I wish that I would have, had these things. One of the top things that they talk about is this classroom management piece on the skills of what to do in some of these situations. And so you first have how do I interact with a student? And then how do I have these conversations with parents? And in some schools, they tell the teacher, don't go do a home visit. Don't go talk to the student's parents unless there's a problem. Well, that seems counterproductive to what, building the relationships, I think are one of the ingredients for the success. So 2 years ago, or no, just last year, there was a law that was updated on the books. We were one of the only states in the country that didn't prohibit physical action against a child as a form of discipline. So that was a clunky way to say it. Our state still allowed, we didn't want anyone doing this, but there wasn't anything to prohibit a teacher, this is way extreme, putting a kid in the closet for a timeout as a form of punishment, not as de-escalation, but as punishment. And so we worked with some people to say, no, we want teachers to be smart about how they handle these situations. And so let's be like other states and give them, a backdrop and families a protection that your child isn't going to have any type of physical harm come to them as a form of punishment. Well, what happened was it was the complete, we did an overcorrection this last year. So teachers were coming to me and saying, well, because of that law, I can't even touch a kid. I had a kid under the desk with scissors going like this on the carpet. Couldn't touch him. Whoa. No. What the law said was you can't physically harm them as a form of punishment, but touching the child, hey, Johnny, or hey, Johnny, however you want to say that, and escorting them from the room, that is not against the law. So now we're back on this same conversation to say, what's appropriate? Here are the protocols. Here's this lane. There is a lane for you to do this well, where you protect the child, protect other students, and protect yourself. And then we're talking with our college deans about preparing our teachers in better ways for this.
And what is that? Do you know what that's going to look like for the college deans?
I don't
colleges?
yet, only because we just had the conversation a week ago, in fact, a week ago today. And the direction to me from the rest of the board was, Debbie, go work with them and then come back with some recommendations. And so
I love that. Oh my gosh.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We can talk about that offline.
Yeah.
But, anyway.
That's so fantastic. Yay for Idaho. I mean, one of the things that I have observed is that, like, when I'm looking at different things that are, doing this last year, as I was like looking into one of the topics, I read an article that, someone else had done about Idaho. And it was like, Idaho really is leading this college and career readiness thing, right? With our different programs. And I just think this is so awesome.
Yeah.
Like these are things that I want to be talking about, hearing about, sharing about with people, because there are remarkable things happening. Yeah. So I love that. I love that you're doing that with the college deans. Yay.
Well, and I shared with the full board that Idaho will lead out in the nation on this. We have the beauty of a system that says one board is over all, there's a governing policy board over all of education. And so if we need something to happen in the K-12 area, and we know it can happen in the higher ed arena, the same board says, the problem is here on the line. Where on the line do we fix it? Okay, well, we need to fix it here. And the same people talking about it. And then we can make it system-wide. We don't have to go to the board of U of I and the board of BSU and the board of Lewis Clark and the board of ISU and say, would you guys please fix this? No, I can say as a board member, we're going to work on it and everyone's going to do this. And I love that Idaho can lead out. And this is just a moment where I'm going to share this. One of the first things that I was asked by a national group after I got elected was, what do you want for yourself, and what do you see for yourself as superintendent? What will be a sign to you that, like, you're getting the job done? And I said, I want Idaho to be a national leader. I want other states to look at Idaho and say, what are they doing over there? Wait a minute, they're doing that, they're doing that. And it's not about me, but it's about all of us working together and who can do what. And then, if I can lead out on it and say, hey, this is how we need to get all of this going, that's to me is the most satisfying part of what I do.
I love that. Well, and I think one of the things that, like, I've observed about you is that it feels like, I'm just like, gosh, she's just so full of ideas. Like, whoa,
My staff is like, please stop it with the ideas.
But one of the things,
the ideas.
you like step. But it's interesting because one of the reasons, and I'm making an assumption here, so you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but one of the reasons I think that you have so many ideas is because you talk to so many people and you're hearing about it from different people. And then you're coming and you collaborate with people, and these ideas grow and they develop and they become this thing that then can then be presented to the public. And I think it's just my observation that as leaders, to me, a leader is someone who is willing to listen, to understand what people's experiences are, to collaborate with their team, grow an idea, and then bring it to fruition, right? Or try it and see what's working and what's not. And that's one of the reasons that I think you have so many ideas. That's my assumption.
I like it. I'll take it. I will take that. I won't take, that sounds better than someone saying I have ADD. So I'll take that. No, I think that there is something to that. And I would just add a couple of things, in the education realm. I've done a lot of these things. Like you, I was a school board member, so I know what it feels like when the state comes in and, and tells you what you're going to do. I also substitute taught for 6 years. And like you, I was in a classroom. Now, I wasn't a certified teacher, but I had a classroom experience, for a number of years. And then I also worked for my school district. So I know what it feels like to be a staff member. I had kids that went to school. And so living some of this and then going and talking with people and listening. And for me, I love to bring solutions to the table. Anyone can critique, but in order to create and to solve, you have to involve other people. And then you have to take all of the problems and say, what can we pull out of there and what can we make that we think will help this situation?
Yeah, I love that. I keep saying that. I think I've said that thing 5-6 times. I love that. I love that. I really
it's better
do.
than what, the opposite of that could be.
Yeah.
So keep it up.
Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, there was something you had this, I just recently saw this. Actually, I saw it on Instagram. And so I went and clicked the link in the bio.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's about showing kids how to show up. Absenteeism. I kind of want to talk about absenteeism for a little bit because it's something that's a real challenge for the entire nation. And you address it in this article and you talk about how, students nationwide, they're missing 10% of school, which is, equivalent to 2 days a month. And Idaho is not exempt from this issue. And you talk about, coupled with this, it's not the same thing, but coupled with this is the way that, schools are funded in Idaho. But that how we are showing our kids why it's important to show up. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit, this absenteeism. What are you seeing?
Thank you.
What do you know?
We know that Idaho is dealing with this issue like many states are, but to a lesser degree. And I think first and foremost, that's because we were mostly in person during COVID. States that were out of school, and some states had kids out of school for 2 years. 2 years. That in itself is, anyway, it would never fly here. And certainly I would never have gotten behind that. Yeah. They're not getting kids back. And kids that are coming back, it's coming back like, maybe I'll come for a day, maybe I won't, maybe I'll this or that. Now, I think because of the in-person experience that we had in Idaho, we didn't lose kids by and large like most of the other states. Now, with that said, there have been definite shifts in attitude about coming to school. And so I wrote this as a plea that schools can do a lot to create an environment to invite and engage students to be there. We want you to be there. All the things that we talked about before that we're asking our teachers to do to create these safe, good learning environments. But our teachers are not in the bedroom when the alarm goes off and fixing breakfast and getting kids on the bus. That's where we need our parents to do that and to see that learning, we talked earlier about learning takes place in a lot of ways, but if you're not in the classroom with the instruction and all of that, you're not getting what your kid needs that year. And so we're asking parents to partner with us in encouraging kids to be on time and to come. Please don't plan your vacations, in the middle of a month when maybe there's assessment or whatever it is, to be more conscious and mindful of what the family is doing and to prioritize coming to schools. We first and foremost care that kids are there because we want them to learn. Attached to that, the way the funding formula works, the current way the legislature appropriates money is based on the kids that are coming. It's not on whether or not they're enrolled. It's on whether or not they come. And that has huge implications for districts. Yeah.
And I have my own feelings about enrollment-based and attendance-based funding, right? So just so people understand, enrollment-based funding is based on how many students are enrolled. This is the most basic way to say it, but attendance-based is based on whether that child is in that seat every day.
And it's an average of that. So it's even watered down just a little bit more. And it's based on the first 10 weeks. So all of the funding that a school gets for an entire school year is based on the average number of kids coming the first 10 weeks.
And that is, the reality is that some of our districts are kind of passing that on, that need for students to be there onto their absence policies, which is, challenging. I think there are things coupled with that are tough. I mean, I know that my kid's school district, it was interesting. My son came and he was like, hey, there's the new attendance policy that says we only get X number of days. And then also, in order to excuse that absence, you either have to have like a doctor's note, or there was something else, but a parent phone call kind of wasn't enough for that. And
I've heard that.
yeah. And I think for me, I really struggle with this idea that like, in order to get this excused, it has to be, one thing or the other. And one of those includes a doctor's note. Well, that line item for me has an implication anyways. It implies that we can get to the doctor. It implies that they can't afford to pay for the doctor. There's some things coupled with that that I think are
and also
hard.
a privacy issue, to be honest, because as a parent, if I want to take my kid out of school, it's not, frankly, the school's business. Why?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to be responsible about that. I'm not just going to take them out whenever but there are times where, I took my kid out of school and I wasn't going to explain why, because I don't have to. I'm the parent. And so there's that piece. So how do we then balance what schools are now being asked to do? And the funding is, we've gone back to that. We went away during COVID and we've returned back to that. And so now schools are feeling that pinch, like, well, we got to prove that was an excused absence. And I think there's a lot of room to talk about what that looks like, especially, again, I mean, a parent phone call or a parent note, that should work, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, I totally
because,
agree.
I'm the parent. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just remember my kids last year when I would call to excuse, they would say, what'd you say? And I would just say, I'm pulling you for this. I don't have to give them a reason.
No.
Right. And I knew within the policy also that my child had X, they were okay,
Sure.
right. I didn't have to, because I kind of understood what those policy components are.
But things come up.
They do.
And then sometimes your kid has a thing where they feel like they need to come home. Mm-hmm. Now, if that's happening every week, then we're going to address that in a different way. But, I can think of times with my kids when they were in school where, they just needed to come home, and they explained it to me, and I wasn't going to explain it to another adult because that wasn't information that they needed to have.
I really appreciate you saying that. It's so
maybe I was one of those parents, but I'm proud of that because that, that's my priority is my kid, and I know them better.
I agree. So then what for you, because I know that you convened a group of individuals, there were some legislators involved. I know I actually don't know everyone who's involved, but you were like, we're going to tackle this funding formula. What was that process like? Because I know that you had a big goal from that. What was that process like, and what did you learn from it?
It was a great process. We had a ton of people, and from that process, we created the policy bill that I told you about that stalled out in the legislature. And there were some folks that peeled off of that after, they kind of went along, but then came back away from it. All of the education side, we were all together on it up until the end. And like I said, I believe in it, and we're going to bring it back. And we're just going to do some more groundwork leading up so that we have critical mass when it comes to support. And I think it comes to the communication piece, explaining what it is. Like the things that I've done in all of my life, if there's a problem, who are the people that we need to have at the table? That's what we did. Who are the people that we need to have at the table to talk about it? We're not going to be able to get significant more amounts of money into public education, not because people don't value education, but because we're in a state that doesn't have a lot of people. We don't tax very much. And so, for when we look and compare ourselves to other states, and a lot of people say, well, look how far Idaho is behind. Well, that's true. However, we also don't tax at the level that many of our other states do. And there's more people to share the burden in these other states. And we don't have those things. And so I think we have to balance this, what we love about Idaho, and then have that reality moment to say, it's not realistic for us to say we're going to add hundreds of millions of dollars into education as we look at, what the revenue streams are. And so setting the table with the people to talk about it like that, legislators, community leaders, business managers, superintendents, and put that out and say, how do we do better with the money that we've got? Mm-hmm. And that's how we came up with this policy. I'm so proud of it. I know that it will work. And we're really gonna talk and get folks behind it.
Well, one of the things that I have learned in my PhD program about public policy, it's really interesting, like some of the theories that are there. And in one of the classes that I took, we had to take one of the theories of public policy and use it to, kind of present a story or a case for, what we saw, like what we wanted. And it was interesting because there's a couple of different theories that are being used to really understand how policy is made and how it gets passed. And one of those is the narrative, is it called? This is awful that I can't think of this off the top of my head. It's like the narrative policy framework, I think. Mm-hmm. Where it's the story that's being told, the story about the policy, how it's going to impact, right? This narrative, the conversations that are happening. And then another one that is really interesting to me is the multiple streams framework that talks about how there's 3 different streams that need to come together to be able to get something on the agenda and then to be able to get that passed. And one of the things that I've seen is that especially with this multiple streams framework, that there is really something to be said about, hey, here's this problem, here are the experts, what they're saying, and then aligning our politicians with that. And then this window opens, right? And then we can get the thing done. So basically what I'm doing is I'm explaining externally what's going on in my brain as you're talking about getting this policy passed.
And that's, and I think that that's spot on. And those are the things that we work to do. And again, find partners and friends in the legislature that can champion that. And then we go in, we talk to more and more people, and this is why, and ask their district folks to call those legislators and explain what this will look like in their district. This is why we need you to be supportive. And the bottom line for me is we're not talking about more money. We're talking about a new way to distribute the same money. And so many times we come in education like this, I can't get that done unless I have more money. I got to have more money. And what I love about how we're talking about the budget is take the same money and we need to get it out in a different way. And I think to talk about it in that way is a huge win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see this as it unfolds.
We'll call you up in January and we're going to put you to work.
That sounds really good.
In your free time.
In my free time. Yeah. So the last thing that I wanted to ask you was, what have you learned about the job in your year and 3/4 now that you've been in it? What have you learned about the job as Superintendent of Public Instruction? And what have you learned about yourself in this process? And also about the people that you meet. Let's tack those 3 things. Okay. The job, yourself, and people. And I'll keep track if you've covered them or not. Don't worry.
Real easy questions to answer in a couple of seconds now. Do you see the smile on my face?
Yes.
I love this job. I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. I'm proud of what's happening in Idaho. There are so many good things. So what I've learned about the job, I one of the things I campaigned on was that I knew what was expected of the job, that I'd be ready to go on day one. And 90% of that has come to pass to be true. But that 10%, that you didn't know, that's a deep 10%. And so we tackle that. I've got a tremendously great team. It takes a team. It takes communication. I love it that I can text a superintendent in the north and the south and the east and say, hey, we're thinking about X, Y, or Z. What do you think about this? And that they'll text me back. I love that part of the job. I want to help people. I know that sounds so cheesy, but I really do. I want to help people be a better superintendent. I want to help teachers have what they need in the classroom. I want to help prepare kids for life and have families be proud of the education in their own backyard. So that I would say on the job part, how we just keep moving forward. I'm so excited about it. Okay, what I've learned about myself. I'm not good at saying no. So, and I'm trying to be a little bit better at that, just to manage my own schedule so that, my husband knows that I remember that I still have a husband. Yeah. And, I want to be out. I want to travel. I want to be present. That's a big deal to me. And we try to be to everything that we possibly can be. And so, I knew I was bad about this before, but I've really learned, wow, you're bad at that, Debbie, saying, yes, we can do it. We can do it. I hate it when you present something to someone and the first thing is like, I don't know. I don't like no people. Like, How are we going to do it? Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
You can say, well, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But how are we going to figure it out? So, that I would say that about myself, just being more careful of my own time. That's something that I'm working on doing. And then about people involved in education care about kids. That's why they're doing the job. So when I hear a lot of these political sound bites out there and national sound bites against education, I think, I don't know people like that. The people that I know are turning up every day. Why? For your kid. Why are they doing what they do on the weekend? For your kid. Why are they putting money into their classroom to make it look cute and it's their own money? For your kid. And I think we forget that teachers and administrators, they're our neighbors. They're the people we go to church with. They're our relatives. And yet we have this feel that education is crumbling and failing around us. And I don't see that. There's so much we can do, and we're always going to improve. But to have this narrative that education is a disaster and doing all these nefarious things for our kids, I don't see that.
I love that you said that, because I was just having a conversation with a teacher the other day, and he was talking to me about some of the frustrating things about his job and working in his school district. And but then he said to me, my challenge, the thing that I think about when I experience these challenges that have to do with the school and the district are that I love the kids. I love my parents that come and show up for their kids. I love that the alumni that are a part of this. I love the businesses right here in this community that are supporting everything that I'm doing. And I just think you have a job, and working at a school is a job. It's a part of an organization, just like if you worked in someplace else. There's challenges with the culture, with the hierarchy of structure, right? Those challenges are there. But at the end of the day, he loves his community that's right there in what he's doing. And it just really captures what you're saying.
It is. I think that's the perfect way to think about public education is a community sport. It's a community builder. Public education is building the community. Mm-hmm. You have locally elected trustees, your neighbor, your accountant, whoever that person is, and they're making decisions about the school in your backyard, who, by the way, has teachers coming there every day that are in your community, and their kids are in the community, and we're trying to build community. And I think we lose that. There's so many things we can always improve. And we're always going to be chasing something that's better and newer and shinier when it comes to education. But we'll never fundamentally change the fact, thankfully, that a teacher gets into it because they really have the heart for teaching. They love learning. There's an art to it. And the people who decide to be unpaid volunteers in your local community and have every arrow thrown at them, they're doing it because they care about your community. And, I wish and hope that we can all be a little kinder and a little more patient with each other. We're all going to do and say things that we shouldn't, or that, could have been said differently, or I don't like that opinion. And, the things that we learned in kindergarten about being kinder to each other, I mean, those couldn't be more relevant than they are today.
I agree. So one of the things, I do this takeaway thing. I don't remember if you remember this from last time you were on. So by the way, I think that besides my producer, you're the first guest that has been come again for the next season. So that's kind of cool for me. I'm woo. Yeah, I know. I'm I know.
Yay for me.
So I do the takeaway thing, right? Kind of like the recap at the end of the episode. So the thing that I'm taking away from this conversation today is that it kind of reinforces why I started the podcast to begin with, which is I really believe in our school communities. This is, for me, when I think about my world lens and where I live, I view where I live through the lens of my school community. These people who are at my kids' schools, they are my neighbors. I go to church with them, right? They are the business owners. They're the ones showing up, helping support this, that, or whatever, all those activities. And it's so important for us to be talking and and in part of what I do, combating the negativity that's out there. It's not that things can't improve, as to your point, right? There are always areas to improve. There's frustrating parts about the experience. Anytime we get people together, there's going to be conflict, right? But it's about saying, hey, these are conversations that we really need to have. Let's have them, because this school community is so important. And so really, I feel very validated from this conversation.
I'm glad I could be here today.
Yes, thank you,
My
Debbie.
work is done.
Yeah. Just for the podcast, like what this is. These are our kids, they're our schools, and we need people who love and show up for our kids and our communities every day. And what I'm feeling from you is so much gratitude for all the people around the state of Idaho who show up for our school communities, because they are so important. That's what I'm taking away from today, Debbie.
I love it. My turn to say I love it. Because I do. And I think the optimism and the positivity around education can grow. And we are going to have frustrating times. Well, go solve that. But in general, let's stop knocking education and educators, because we're all involved in this. We all play a role. And I think talking positively, I'm excited. I'm excited about our state. I can't think of a more exciting time to be involved in education than right now. What we can provide for our students, how we can prepare them. There are future leaders. There are future mayors. There are future Alexises and their podcasts. And that's what it's about. I mean, we're growing our young people to contribute to our community. And I think when we can focus on that, it might help our blood pressure go down a little bit on some of the other things.
So well said. Well, thank you so much, Debbie, for coming in today. I'm really excited to see how this school year goes and into the legislative session. And I mean, maybe you'll be back at the end of the season to kind of talk about some of these great things that did come about through your leadership.
Well, if you invite me, I've clearly established I won't say no.
Yeah.
No. I will say yes no matter what. No, awesome. I appreciate the opportunity. And thanks for what you do, highlighting this and making it a public discussion, that it's okay to have differences of opinions and it's okay to come at things in a different way. Let's talk about that, because fundamentally we're here for kids.
Amen. Thank you. Okay. Well, you have a great school year.
Thank you. You too. You're in school as well.
I am. Yeah. It's awesome. Yay for all of us.
That's right. Go fight, win.